Do you remember RadioShack, that place you'd go for a weird battery, a specific cable, or maybe just to mess with the remote control cars? For decades it was a staple in every American mall and neighborhood. At its peak, there was a RadioShack store within a 5-minute drive of 95% of the American population. It was an institution. And then, in what felt like the blink of an eye, it was gone. Between 2012 and 2017, RadioShack closed over 4,000 stores. So, what happened? How did a century-old electronics giant collapse so spectacularly? Today, we're plugging in to find out. This is the story of how RadioShack lost its signal. Our story begins way back in 1921, founded by two brothers, Theodore and Milton Deutschman, in Boston. It started as a mail-order business for amateur ham radio operators. The name RadioShack literally came from the small wooden structure on a ship that housed the radio equipment. It was a brand built for enthusiasts, by enthusiasts. They knew their stuff, and they sold quality components to people who were passionate about technology. For the next several decades, this was their bread and butter. They grew steadily, opening stores and becoming a go-to spot for hobbyists and tinkerers. If you wanted to build your own radio or fix a piece of electronics, RadioShack was your paradise. This niche focus was its greatest strength. Then, in 1963, a big change happened. Charles Tandy, the owner of the Tandy Corporation, a leather goods company, bought RadioShack. Tandy was a master of retail, and he saw huge potential. He transformed RadioShack from a niche hobbyist store into a mainstream consumer electronics giant. He kept the components and batteries but added a whole range of finished products, stereos, walkie-talkies, and calculators. This strategy was a massive success. Throughout the 70s and 80s, RadioShack was on the cutting edge. They were one of the first companies to sell a mass-market personal computer, the TRS-80, in 1977. For a while, they were actually competing with Apple and Commodore. They were innovative, they were everywhere, and they were profitable. They became the ultimate electronics convenience store. Need a phone cord? RadioShack. Need a new antenna? RadioShack. Need a last-minute gift for a nerdy nephew? You get the idea. So, if they were so successful, where did it all go wrong? The seeds of RadioShack's destruction were planted in its greatest success, its convenience model. As technology evolved, RadioShack didn't. The world moved on, but the stores felt like they were stuck in 1985. The first major blow was the rise of big-box retailers in the 1990s, like Best Buy in Circuit City. These huge stores could offer a much wider selection of products at lower prices. Why buy a TV at RadioShack when you could go to Best Buy and see 20 different models side by side? RadioShack's small footprint, once a strength, became a crippling weakness. They simply couldn't compete on selection or price. Instead of adapting, RadioShack doubled down on what it knew, but in the worst way possible. They became heavily reliant on selling mobile phones and service plans. For a time, this was a lifeline. You'd walk into a RadioShack, and employees who were under immense pressure to hit sales targets would immediately try to sell you a Sprint or Verizon plan. This shifted the entire focus of the store. They went from being helpful tech experts to being pushy salespeople. The old-school hobbyists felt alienated, and new customers were annoyed. This strategy also tied their fate to the success of mobile carriers. As carriers started opening their own dedicated stores and selling phones directly online, RadioShack's role as the middleman became obsolete. They were selling someone else's product, and that someone else eventually cut them out. Then came the final nail in the coffin, the internet. E-commerce giants like Amazon completely redefined convenience. Why drive to a physical store for a specific cable when you could order it online with 2 clicks and have it delivered to your door, often for less money? The very reason RadioShack existed, providing quick access to electronic parts, was perfectly replicated and improved upon by the internet. The brand had built its empire on being the most convenient option, and suddenly, it was one of the least convenient. Their vast network of physical stores, once their crown jewel, became a massive financial liability. The rent, the staff, the inventory, it all added up to an unsustainable business model in the age of Amazon. By the early 2010s, the company was bleeding money. They tried desperate rebranding efforts. They launched a now infamous Super Bowl ad in 2014, making fun of their outdated 80s image. It was clever, but it was too little, too late. You can't fix a broken business model with a funny commercial. The ad basically said, "We know our stores are stuck in the past. Please come see our new ones." But when people visited, the stores were largely the same, cluttered, understaffed, and still trying to push mobile phone plans. The disconnect between marketing and reality was huge. They failed to fundamentally change what the store asterisk was asterisk. In 2015, the inevitable happened. RadioShack filed for bankruptcy. They closed thousands of stores, and Sprint took over many of the remaining locations, turning them into co-branded stores. It was a shadow of its former self. A second bankruptcy followed in 2017, leading to even more closures. The physical retail empire had crumbled. The story of RadioShack isn't just about a failed company. It's a powerful lesson about the danger of complacency. They had a loyal customer base, a massive physical presence, and a brand name that was once synonymous with technology. But they failed to see how the world was changing around them. They clung to an outdated business model, misread market shifts, and alienated their core customers. They stopped being the place for innovators and became a relic of a bygone era. Today, the RadioShack brand lives on. It was purchased by an investment group and now exists primarily as an online retailer and, bizarrely, a cryptocurrency platform. The brand's social media presence has become known for its strange and chaotic posts, a far cry from the reliable neighborhood store it once was. It's a sad and strange final chapter for a once great American icon. RadioShack is a reminder that in the world of technology, you either evolve or you get unplugged. It's a cautionary tale that shows no company, no matter how big or beloved, is immune to the relentless march of progress. Thanks for watching. If you found this trip down memory lane interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the businesses that shaped our world. See you next time.